The private wing of Seoul's Gangnam Medical Tower had never seen chaos like this. 21 of Asia's most decorated physicians crowded into a suite that cost more than most apartments. Their white coats a blur of urgent motion under Italian marble and hand-carved mahogany. Cardiac monitors shrieked. Oxygen machines wheezed. A team from Seoul National University Hospital shouted orders at specialists flown in from Tokyo, while a renowned toxicologist from Singapore pressed her fingers to her temples and whispered what no one wanted to hear. "We're losing him. Welcome, my beautiful family. Before we dive deeper into this heartwarming tale, make sure you subscribe, like and comment where you're watching this from. I'd love to meet you." Now let's begin. Baby Minute Jun, only son of Minute Goon, the man who controlled half of Seoul's underground empire, was dying, and $80,000 an hour in medical brilliance couldn't tell anyone why. His tiny body had taken on an unnatural cherry-red flush, lips darkening to wine-stained purple, a strange pallor spreading across his skin like a curse creeping through porcelain. Every test came back baffling. Every intervention failed. And through the service corridor window, mopping the same 3 feet of floor for the 5th time because no one had dismissed her yet, stood Yoma. 16 years old, daughter of a Ghanaian healer buried in red clay an ocean away, wearing scrubs 2 sizes too large and shoes with soles worn so thin she could feel the cold of the tile through them. She'd spent 8 months being invisible in this hospital. The girl who worked the graveyard shift, who cleaned what the day staff refused to touch, who understood everything because no one ever bothered to lower their voices around her. Right now, she was staring at the remnants of the baby's last meal, still visible in a sterling silver bowl on the bedside table. The imported organic baby food that had arrived from a specialty shop in Itaewon. The one that smelled wrong, not spoiled, but wrong in a way that made her mother's voice rise up from memory like smoke. That faint scent underneath the manufactured sweetness. Bitter almonds. The baby's cherry-red skin. The rapid deterioration despite perfect oxygen saturation. Yoma's hands trembled on the mop handle. She knew what this was. Her mother, who'd saved half their village with nothing but knowledge passed down through generations and faith in what grew from the earth, had taught her to recognize these signs before she learned to write her name in English. Cyanide. Cassava poisoning. Improperly processed. Deadly as a blade. The doctors were about to intubate that baby again, looking for respiratory failure. The answer was sitting in a silver bowl, imported and organic and wrapped in the false promise of purity. Yoma looked at the window, then at the armed security guard stationed outside the door, then at her supervisor's face through the hallway glass, the woman who'd warned her every single day since she'd arrived. Keep your head down. Don't speak unless spoken to. Don't give them a reason to check your visa status. One complaint and you're on a plane back to Accra. She thought about what would happen if she was wrong, deportation, maybe worse if Minute Goon's men decided she'd tried to harm his son. Then she thought about what would happen if she was right and said nothing. Another child dead while she mopped floors and stayed silent. Yoma set down her mop, pulled her mother's journal from the pocket of her scrubs, and moved toward the door. What would you risk to save a life that the world says isn't your business to save? Yoma had learned to move without making a sound by the time she was 12 years old. It wasn't a skill anyone had taught her. It was survival. When you were a black immigrant girl working night shifts in Seoul's most exclusive hospital, a hospital where some patients paid more for a private suite than her entire family had earned in a year back home, you learned quickly that your presence was tolerated, not welcomed. You learned to move like a shadow, to breathe like silence, to become so small, so quiet, so utterly unremarkable that the wealthy people gliding through these pristine hallways never had to be inconvenienced by acknowledging your humanity. You learned that the wrong eye contact could cost you your job. That questions were insubordination. That your accent made people speak slower and louder, as if volume could bridge the gap between their Korean and your English. You learned that the other cleaners, the Korean ajummers who'd worked here for decades, wouldn't sit with you at lunch, wouldn't teach you the faster ways to strip a bed or the places where you could rest for 5 minutes without being seen. You learned that dangerous neighborhoods meant places where people looked like you. That cultural differences meant everything about you was wrong. Your hair, your food, the way your mother's journal was filled with drawings of plants instead of prescriptions in neat medical script. Yoma had learned all of this. She'd survived by learning it. But her mother had taught her something else too, in the years before the cancer came, before the hospital bills swallowed everything, before Yoma had to choose between finishing school and saving her family. Her mother had taught her that some knowledge doesn't come from universities or textbooks. That wisdom passed down through generations of women who healed with their hands was no less real than what happened in rooms full of machines and fluorescent lights. Her mother had taught her to trust what she saw, even when no one else would believe her. And right now, through that window, past the armed guards and the doctors with degrees from universities Yoma couldn't afford to dream about, she could see death arriving for a child, and she was the only one in this entire billion-1 facility who knew how to stop it. Yoma had been invisible for exactly 243 days. She knew because she counted them, marking each shift survived in the margins of her mother's journal, right next to the drawing of the plant that cured fevers. 243 days of arriving at Gangnam Medical Tower at 11 p.m., when the important people had gone home and only emergencies and ghosts walked the halls. Her supervisor, Mrs. Choi, handed her the same speech every night along with the supply cart. No talking to patients. No looking at medical charts. No going into rooms where doctors are working. You clean, you leave, you don't exist. The unspoken part hung in the air like disinfectant. One complaint and your work visa gets reviewed, and reviewed visas for African girls who clean toilets never end well. The other cleaners called her that African girl when they thought she couldn't hear, which was always because they decided she didn't understand Korean despite 8 months of listening to every word. They didn't sit with her during the 15-minute break at 3 a.m. They didn't show her which supply closets had working heaters or which security guards would look the other way if you needed to rest. So Yoma had learned the hospital alone. The VIP wing on the 7th floor where chaebols recovered from cosmetic procedures in rooms with better furniture than her entire apartment. The emergency department where she mopped blood no one else wanted to touch. The service corridors where she could move floor to floor without anyone seeing her face. And every night, folded inside her scrubs, pressed against her heart like a talisman, her mother's journal. 60 pages of hand-drawn plants, remedies written in Chi, knowledge that had kept their village alive for generations. Knowledge that everyone here would call primitive. Superstition. Witchcraft. Knowledge that tonight would mean she could never be invisible again. The alarm came at 1:47 a.m., shattering the usual silence of the graveyard shift. Yoma was scrubbing the 3rd-floor nurses' station when the elevator doors opened and Hell walked out wearing a tailored suit. Minute Goon moved like violence wrapped in expensive fabric, flanked by 6 men whose jackets couldn't quite hide the shape of guns. He carried a bundle in his arms, a baby, maybe 6 months old, lips already turning the wrong color. Behind him, doctors materialized as if summoned by wealth itself. The hospital director in pajamas. Department heads still pulling on their white coats. Security clearing entire hallways with hand gestures that meant civilians disappeared. Yoma pressed herself against the wall, mop in hand, trying to become part of the tile. She'd heard stories about Minute Goon. Everyone had. The man who controlled the Hongdae clubs, the Gangnam real estate, the politicians who forgot their promises. The man whose name made prosecutors retire early and witnesses relocate to other countries. 21 specialists, she heard the director say, voice shaking despite his attempt at calm. Flying in from Tokyo, Singapore, Beijing. The best in Asia. We'll save your son, Minute Goonim. Through the chaos, Yoma caught fragments of conversation from the nurses huddled near the supply room. His only legitimate child. The other 2 sons are from his mistresses, not recognized. If this baby dies, there's no clear air. There'll be a war in the underground. Blood everywhere. The security guard noticed her then, still standing there with her mop. You. Move. This floor is closed. Yoma bowed and backed away, but not before she saw them wheel the baby into the VIP suite. Not before she saw the silver bowl being carried alongside the medical equipment, the imported baby food someone was still trying to feed him. Not before she smelled it. Faint, underneath the antiseptic and panic. Bitter almonds. They'd forgotten about her by 3 a.m., the way people always forgot about cleaners. Yoma had been reassigned to the 7th floor, specifically told to avoid the VIP suite, which meant she positioned her cart directly outside it. Invisible people could stand anywhere. No one cared. Through the partially open door, she watched the medical theater unfold. 21 doctors crowded around monitors displaying numbers that apparently made no sense. The baby lay under lights, skin gleaming with that strange cherry-red flush that made the pediatric cardiologist shake his head. Oxygen saturation is perfect. So why does he look cyanotic? Run the metabolic panel again, someone ordered in English. Check for congenital heart defects, hemoglobin disorders, methemoglobinemia. They were looking for zebras when a horse was standing right in front of them. Yoma moved closer, emptying the trash bin just inside the door. The smell hit her stronger now, that bitter almond scent her mother had made her memorize by crushing cassava leaves under her nose. If you ever smell this on someone's breath, on their skin, you run for the antidote. 5 minutes is the difference between life and death. She could see the baby clearly now. The cherry-red skin. The rapid breathing. The way his little fingers clenched and unclenched, body fighting something his brain couldn't name. On the bedside table, the silver bowl, the organic baby food label in English and Korean, the picture of cassava root right there on the packaging. Traditionally prepared, it promised. Liver enzymes are elevated, a doctor announced, staring at a screen. Could be sepsis, another suggested. Start broad-spectrum antibiotics. Yoma's hands tightened on the trash bag. Her mother's voice echoed, cyanide blocks oxygen in the blood. The body suffocates from the inside while the monitors say everything is fine. She looked at the baby. Then at the armed guards. Then at the exit. She had maybe an hour before those little lungs gave up completely. Yoma locked herself in the third-floor supply closet, the one with the broken light that no one bothered to fix because only cleaners used it. Her hands shook as she pulled out her mother's journal, fingers finding the page she needed by muscle memory alone. There, in her mother's careful hand, the cassava plant spread across the paper in brown ink. Roots drawn in cross-section, the bitter varieties marked with 3 lines, the warning written in both Chi and broken English, beautiful poison. Feed a village or kill a family, all depends on who knows the old ways. Yoma traced the notes her mother had written during the outbreak in their village, when 4 children had eaten improperly processed cassava flour. She'd been 12, helping her mother carry water, watching her work. The symptoms matched exactly: cherry-red skin, labored breathing, the way the children looked almost healthy even as they died. Modern doctors look for disease, her mother had told her, crushing leaves for the antidote paste. They forget that sometimes poison is just poison, wearing fancy packaging. The treatment was there in her mother's hand: sodium thiosulfate, hydroxycobalamin. But before hospitals, before injections, we used activated charcoal mixed with clay from the river, forced down their throats to bind the cyanide. Crude, but it bought time. Yoma's mind raced. The hospital would have pharmaceutical-grade sodium thiosulfate. She'd seen bottles in the emergency crash carts, though she wasn't supposed to know what they were for. But getting to it, getting anyone to listen, getting past Minute Goon's guards. She turned the page. Her mother had written one more line at the bottom, added later in shakier handwriting, probably during the cancer: knowledge without courage is just words on paper. Your grandmother didn't ask permission to save lives. Neither should you. Yoma closed the journal and stood. The baby had maybe 45 minutes left. She'd already wasted 5 of them hiding. Yoma stood in the supply closet and did the math she'd been doing since the day she arrived in Seoul. If she spoke up and was wrong, immediate termination. Mrs. Choi would report her for overstepping, for accessing medical information she wasn't authorized to see. The hospital would review her work visa. She'd be on a plane to Accra within a week, and her siblings, 12-year-old Kofi, 9-year-old Amma, would lose the money she sent home every month. The money that kept them in school. That paid for the roof her uncle kept promising to fix. That bought medicine when the rains brought fever. If she spoke up and was right but no one believed her, worse than termination. Minute Goon's men might decide she was a threat, someone who knew too much, someone whose theories could implicate the wrong people. Girls like her disappeared in cities like this. The headlines would say illegal immigrant even though her visa was legitimate. No investigation. No justice. Just gone. If she spoke up and was right and they listened, she'd still be deported eventually. The story would spread, the cleaning girl who diagnosed what 21 specialists missed. The hospital couldn't allow that embarrassment. Someone would find a reason to revoke her visa. Different ending, same result. But if she stayed silent, A 6-month-old baby would stop breathing sometime in the next hour. The doctors would call it sudden infant death syndrome, maybe sepsis, maybe some rare genetic condition. They'd never know it was the organic baby food, the improperly processed cassava that someone had marketed as premium and pure. They'd never know because cyanide metabolized quickly, leaving almost no trace if you didn't test for it immediately. And Yoma would mop the floors where they'd tried to save him. She'd empty the trash bins. She'd go home and open her mother's journal and know that she'd had the answer and chosen survival over truth. She'd live. She'd send money home. She'd betray everything her mother had died believing in. Yoma found Nurse Park first, the youngest one, the one who sometimes nodded at her in the hallways. She was standing outside the VIP suite, updating charts on a tablet. "Excuse me," Yoma said in careful Korean, the words feeling thick in her mouth. "The baby, I think." Nurse Park looked up, startled that the cleaning girl had spoken. "You need to leave this floor. Didn't security tell you?" "Please," the food he ate. "It smells like." "You're not authorized to be discussing patients." Nurse Park's voice dropped to a harsh whisper. "Do you want to lose your job? Go. Now." Yoma backed away but didn't leave. She waited until she saw Dr. Kim, one of the junior residents, emerging from the suite looking exhausted. Younger. Maybe more willing to listen. "Doctor," she tried in English this time, following him down the hall. "The baby, I know what's wrong." He spun around, irritated. "Who are you?" "I work here. Cleaning. But my mother was a healer, and I think the baby has cyanide poisoning from the cassava in his food." "Cyanide?" Dr. Kim's face shifted from confusion to anger. "You've been listening to confidential medical discussions? That's a violation." "No, I just saw." "Security." He was already pulling out his phone. "We have a cleaner harassing staff and accessing patient information." Through the suite door behind them, Yoma heard the cardiac monitor change pitch. The alarm that meant something critical was happening. "Please." She grabbed Dr. Kim's sleeve, desperate now. "Test for cyanide. Sodium thiosulfate. You have maybe 10 minutes. He jerked away from her touch like she'd burned him. "If you say one more word, I'm calling immigration, not just security." Mrs. Choi appeared at the end of the hallway, moving fast, face thunderous. Yoma ran. Yoma hit the suite door with both hands, shoving it open before anyone could stop her. 21 heads turned. The baby's monitor screamed a flatline warning that someone was trying to silence. "Cyanide," she shouted, the Korean word coming out wrong but close enough. "The food, cassava, poison." For one frozen second, no one moved. Then chaos. 2 of Minute Goon's guards grabbed her arms, lifting her off her feet. She fought them, still trying to reach the bedside table. "The baby food. Test it. Bitter almonds. You can smell it." "Get her out," the hospital director hissed. "Wait." Yoma thrashed against the guard's grip, her mother's journal falling from her scrubs onto the pristine floor. "Sodium thiosulfate. You have it here. Emergency antidote. Please." One of the Tokyo specialists glanced at her, then at his colleague, and actually laughed. A short, exhausted sound. "She thinks it's cyanide because of a smell." "Probably watched too much television," another doctor muttered in English, not bothering to lower his voice. "These immigrant workers, they think they know medicine. My mother was a healer." Yoma's voice cracked. "I've seen this before, cherry-red skin, the breathing pattern." "Your mother was what, a witch doctor?" The Seoul National University professor didn't look up from adjusting the ventilator. "This is a hospital. We use science, not African superstition." Minute Goon finally spoke, his voice quiet and more terrifying than shouting. "Remove her. Now." The guards dragged Yoma backward through the door. She saw her mother's journal still on the floor, pages open to the cassava drawing. She saw the baby's chest rising and falling too fast, too shallow. She saw the silver bowl, still sitting there on the table. And she saw the clock, 4:23 a.m. She had maybe 5 minutes to do the unthinkable. The guards threw Yoma into the hallway and stationed themselves at the door. She stumbled, catching herself against the wall, mind racing through the hospital's layout. The service corridors. The ones only cleaners knew. She ran. Down the stairs to the second floor, through the laundry chute access, up the back elevator that maintenance used. Her cart was still where she'd left it outside the suite, and she grabbed the bottle she'd mixed that morning, industrial cleaning solution, sodium thiosulfate-based, the same chemical compound her mother had described but diluted for mopping floors. Not medical grade. Not sterile. But it would bind cyanide if she could get enough into the baby's system. She burst through the service entrance directly into the suite, the door that led from the private bathroom. The doctors were clustered around the monitors, someone calling for intubation equipment. No one saw her. Yoma didn't think. She crossed the room in 4 strides, shoved past a startled nurse, and grabbed the baby from the bassinet. The room exploded. What the? Stop her. Minute goons roar, grab her. Yoma held the baby against her chest with one arm, already unscrewing the bottle cap with her teeth. Hands grabbed her shoulders, her hair, trying to wrench her backward. She tipped the bottle, forcing the liquid past the baby's lips, her voice a desperate prayer in Chi. Drink, little one, drink. Someone hit her. Hard. Her vision starred but she held on, kept the bottle tilted, watching the baby swallow reflexively, cough, swallow again. The guards ripped her away. The bottle clattered to the floor, spilling clear liquid across Italian marble. Yoma's head cracked against the wall as they slammed her down, knee in her back, arms wrenched behind her. But she'd gotten almost half the bottle into him. Now they just have to wait and see if she'd saved his life or killed them both. They held Yoma on the floor for 3 minutes before someone noticed the monitors. Wait, one of the Tokyo specialists said. His oxygen uptake is improving. That's impossible, the cardiologist replied, but he was already moving to check the readings. His heart rate is stabilizing. Color is returning to normal. The baby coughed. Then cried. A strong, angry sound that cut through the room like a knife. What did you give him? The hospital director whirled on Yoma, still pinned beneath the guard's knee. Sodium thiosulfate, she gasped out. From my cleaning cart. It binds cyanide. Test the food. Minute Goon's voice was absolutely calm, which somehow made it more terrifying. Test it now. The next 20 minutes moved in slow motion. Yoma sat in a chair, wrists zip-tied, while a guard stood behind her and doctors rushed samples to the lab. The baby continued to improve, crying lustily now, color pink and healthy. At 4:51 a.m., the lab results came back. Cyanogenic glycosides, the toxicologist read, voice hollow. Consistent with improperly processed cassava. Fatal levels. The silence that followed could have shattered glass. Minute Goon walked to where Yoma sat. Up close, she could see the exhaustion in his face, the terror he'd been holding back. He crouched to her eye level, and when he spoke, his voice was soft. How did you know? My mother taught me. Yoma met his eyes, too tired to be afraid anymore. She was a healer in Ghana. She saved 4 children from cassava poisoning when I was 12. Minute Goon studied her for a long moment. Then he reached out and cut the zip ties himself. What's your name? Yoma. Yoma. He tested the name. 21 doctors. Millions in equipment. And you saw what they couldn't. He stood, addressing the room. Find out who sold us that food. Then back to Yoma, and this was when she understood the real danger. You work for me now.